It's Wednesday. It's top draw. Leave it to me to make a technical difficulty thingy happen, like right at the start of the show, because apparently that's the secret to success. Hi, everybody. It's Pseudo. How is everyone on this really cold Wednesday evening? I am, as you can tell, still not quite in my office. I don't have Mizpah here, as we had discussed. Part of today is all about us building a deck to beat Mizpah. However, I've got lots of things to cover that I want to get into before I get into that. So let me take care of the news. So first off, thank you for coming. If you have not had a chance to look at our previous episodes, Monday was all about healing in the Holy Trinity in MMOs. Friday, previously, Aiko and myself were involved in discussing the medic, and we have a new blog column type thing all about WildStar that's going to be on a weekly distribution. It's written by Aiko. For those of you in the WildStar community who know him, for those who are unfamiliar with him, his name is Anthony, and he is writing the USE column, which is the Untamed Solar Entity column. And it's all about all the stuff that's happening within WildStar, as well as some deep delves and looking into stuff, which is kind of cool. So, yeah, yay on that. This Friday, we should have, drumroll please, Gazimov and Mizpah so far have told me that Friday they should be able to make it for the Cosmotronic, which is a good thing because we're all about the Redactineer or the Engineer. So we'll go into that then. Tonight's show, however, is including something rather special. I am giving away a beta key to Hearthstone. Yeah, I know open beta is coming. However, the reality is not here yet. So I do have one key to give away. It says it's for Americas, but, hey, we will see. But I am giving this key away at some point within the show. And I will be giving away how to get it because our bot's not working in the chat. So that's going to make it a little difficult for me to just say, ha, here you go, here's a key. So instead, if you know somebody who wants Hearthstone beta key, get them to come in to the show. Advertising done right. Right, so a little bit of news. The patch has been applied to Hearthstone. Things are not what they used to be. Mind Control is now a 10 mana card, not an 8 mana card. And we will be going over the patch notes because part of building the deck and understanding deck design, as we've discussed in the previous episodes, is actually understanding the cards and the implications that could come from this or the changes and things like that. And since this is a digital version of a game and I don't have to go out and buy a new pack, all of the cards that I had that were of a certain kind are now what they want them to be, which kind of makes it more interesting and intriguing, but at the same time slightly frustrating, but at the same time it saves you money. So, there you go. Another thing is for those who have not been keeping up with Faria, really fun game. It is another card game, but it's a strategy card game versus, say, a trading card game, but it still has cards. It's a fun thing. You can read a lovely article I wrote about it on the MMOBuff.TV site, but they have also patched recently as well. And there are some changes to the cards that they're doing that are kind of important. So this is patch week for most of the TCGs that are out there that I am aware of. However, they're not the only TCGs. Something I'm noticing trend-wise is the fact that in many card games now, they're trying to rely on a previously designed IP, which is their intellectual property. So for example, in Hearthstone, you're using things like Thrall, Jaina, Rexar. These are intellectual property pieces of Blizzard, and Hearthstone is their Blizzard piece. However, there is a new card game, which I have just discovered today, that I am going to be looking into based off of another intellectual property. It's based off of the Heroes of Might and Magic, and it is a free online card game. So to give you a little bit of an idea of what this looks like, it is a card game. Do I have any clue about anything about it yet? No. But I am interested to look into it because I am a fan of the Heroes of Might and Magic. So I'm going to be really curious to see what it is that they do, how they pull it across, what is this layout, what does it mean? You mean, is this just your average revamp with just different skins, or are they actually following a bit of the lore? And yeah, it is free to play. You can actually find it on Steam right now, and that link I probably should put it up, but that actually requires me turning away from the camera, and I'd rather look at you. That's right, I'm watching you. You might want to put that down. Someone could be watching you, like me. Anyway, so yes, this is something I'm going to be looking into, and I'm probably going to end up dissecting this game as well, writing an article, sort of like I did with Faria, to give people a little bit of a look inside. I am interested to see what this is going to bring to the trading card online genre. Online trading card genre? OTCG? Something along those lines. So I'll be curious to see what it's all about. But yes. Yes. Aussie says that this looks like a Heroes of Might and Magic board. Yeah, pretty much. At least the way they're toting it is that it is a story unto itself, and yeah, we will see what ends up happening. The way I kind of look at it is simply we are finding ourselves at a point in time within the trading card genre, or at least online trading card genre, that the new cards and new games that are coming out are tending to be from companies that already have another game out in some way, shape, or form. So they already have the lore behind it. They already have a bit of history behind it. There are some notable exceptions, like, for example, Hex. But Hex is, I think, going a little out there. And there have been some people who have critiqued Hex because they think that they're trying to take on too much, making it too complicated. Trading card games were never, I don't think, supposed to be designed to just be simple. They're supposed to add challenge. They're supposed to be intriguing. This is why when we discussed deck design, we were talking about how the metagame constantly changes, metagame being the end game, and how one deck will be the one that smashes it all, so to speak, or one style of deck, and then someone's going to come around and create something that destroys that deck, which completely changes the metagame again, which is interesting, exciting, and all the good stuff that goes with it. And I'm going to have to relaunch the game. Darn you! Apparently I was AFK for too long. Right. Sorry. I got yelled at. Silly Hearthstone. Right, so... Hey! You get to listen. Okay, so this to me, like I said, seems kind of interesting. There is a lot to making a card game interesting, and this is just something I'm going to be reviewing soon. So keep your eyes peeled. Hey, it is entirely possible, Aussie. Aussie is pointing out that he'd wager that the Fortress, the humans, are fighting against either the undead or demons or both. Now, that's the thing. I mean, there are apparently 40 different heroes that you can select. Sound familiar? And based on what you select depends on the type of minions that you control, etc. That's about as much as I know about this game. So, we will come back to it. Otherwise, we're looking at Hearthstone today. Yes, and what's really cool is the fact that I did get my hands on the Elite Tauren Chieftain card, which we may or may not put into our deck to beat up Mizpah. And we'll be coming back to that in a couple minutes. Okay, let me think. Is there anything else that I need to cover? No. Other than, please make certain that you are following. Please make certain you are subscribing. Aww. Don't forget, we do have a chat that is IRC oriented. That is at MMOBuff.TV/chat. Feel free to come in. We're in there. If I'm working, I'm in there. If I'm awake, I'm in there. If you need me, just say my name. Say my name. But anyway, so let us move very quickly away from me singing and towards the discussion of stuff that's kind of important. Now, I did not have this. I had this set up, but because of the way that the game has done stuff, I have to reset it up. So I'm going to kind of be setting it up on the fly. Kind of. So let's do that. Haha. So we all know that a big part of today's episode is us building a deck to go up against Mizpah, my co-host, who is currently still kind of traveling around the world. Hopefully, we'll have him back soon. Well, we'll have him back on Monday or Friday. At least that's the fingers. But the entire point is to build a deck that, using the principles and the terms and things that we have discovered from previous episodes, to make a deck that makes sense. Now, like I said before, in order to do this, what we really, really need to do is we need to be able to actually understand what's going on. And we'll go with this. See? Ta-da! Now I can just sort of make this come like this, and we has patch notes. Yay, patch notes. So patch notes are important because, like I said, they impact everything. And now that's going to make it difficult for me to actually see the chat. So now I'm going to have to modify the chat so that I can see the chat. There we go. Yes, Team Josie, Team Pseudo versus Mizpah. And so, as a reminder, I will be giving away Hearthstone Beta Key. I'm not advertising it because I'm kind of curious to see, what you all can do to get people who want a Hearthstone Beta Key in. Consider it a challenge. As I drink my milk, because I apparently really need it. Right, so, what are we looking at? We are looking at our patch notes. Now, usually when patch notes come out, people can kind of just glance over them and go, oh, well, that's kind of exciting, woohoo. Or this doesn't really impact me. Let me know if that's clear, because it looks kind of clear to me, but at the same time, it doesn't. So I kind of want to make certain that you guys can actually read it. That's sort of important. But anyway, what I want to do is I want to dig into why we think these changes have been made and what impact we think this is actually going to have on the deck we're building. Now, one of the things that I discussed before is the fact that for my play style, I'm definitely going to want to take some kind of metagame style, more Spike than, say, Timmy or Johnny. And the reality is I'm more of a Timmy than a Johnny. I really like combos. I like to pull things together that people go, well, wait, that was rather interesting. But that's a little hard to do when you only have 30 cards and you don't always have all the cards that you want. So, as it may be, we'll see what ends up happening. But we want to discuss all the changes that are coming in. Some of these are kind of like, yeah, we get this. For example, parental controls now disable in-game shop purchases. That's kind of not what we're here to discuss. Instead, we're here to discuss things like the amount of gold gained by winning games in play mode per day is now capped at 100. This cap does not affect gold gained through quests, arena, or achievements. There will now be an indication within game when the gold cap is reached. This cap is intended to combat certain methods of gold acquisition that violate our terms of service. The spirit of fair play is extremely important to us, and we will continue to monitor gold acquisition activity closely to ensure a fun and enjoyable game environment for everyone. So, basically, this is kind of interesting because apparently people are already finding ways to gain gold. Like with most Blizzard properties, you expect to have your gold farmers. I guess that's pretty much within most games where there's a resource of some kind. But it seems that some people have actually taken a hardcore advantage of this. Now, this does have an impact, because if we move into the Hearthstone game here, yes, and let's go into the shop, you'll notice that the pack is 100 gold. Now, this can mean an awful lot to somebody if they're used to getting 2 to 3 decks a day. Not going to happen anymore. Right. So, they've added ranking, and they're messing around with ranking, which is kind of cool, and they're doing arena. Now, I could go into that, but I am more interested in this, because this to me is what's going to either make or break the game for me, and the deck we're going to be building. Yes, Aussie, for shame. Gold farmers have actually migrated here. Right. So, They've animated the golden cards. Not that big of a deal, but this game is all about the visual style. It's about keeping you intrigued because it feels real. So it feels almost as if you are touching the board, tactile and everything, which is one of the game designer's choices. And to be perfectly frank, it's one of the things that actually intrigues me and keeps me really interested because it doesn't feel like a two-dimensional game. It definitely feels 3D. And yeah, that's fun. So we do have some visual effects changing, which is not going to impact us. Right. One of the staples of the Hunter card decks, Unleash the Hounds. It has been redone, revamped, as the case may be. Now, to understand this, we're going to move, and I'm going to have all kinds of stuff, which I don't have ready. Hey, I clicked the wrong button. And what happens when you click the wrong button? You see a server farm. Yes, folks, you are now seeing my desktop. There we go. Whoops. I was ready, I swear, but apparently it has been a rather long day for me. And I'm a little behind. Right. Now, the way that the Hounds, or Unleash the Hounds used to work, was that you would give your beasts +1 attack and charge. All of them. Now, if you think about this, it's not that... It's a big deal. It's a big deal in the fact that the actual cards themselves are cheap. It costs 1 mana. So if you have 1 mana, you can play this card. Now, if you had your 10 mana bar, or you got yourself up to the 10, or technically speaking, you could give yourself 11 because you can kind of give yourself that mana through the coin, etc. And there is a way to actually play that. But you could play a whole bunch of creatures. Play this card. They all get +1 attack. They all get charge. Game ends. You can win on 1 turn with just this 1 card. That is really cheap. It's a little hard to ensure you're prepped for that and you've actually survived to be that long, but the reality is the card needed changing, and change it they did. This card has now been modified so that it summons a 1/1 Hound with charge for each enemy minion. So let's say that you're going up against somebody who decides to put, 7 minions down and they think they've got it. You could kind of use this as a slight board wipe, or at least help you to get board control, because 1/1 charges, and if they've got 7 minions up, that means you basically get 7 minions on your board that you can get rid of other oh good gosh, my brain just fried. You can get rid of other minions on the board with. So when we were talking before about the 2-for-1s, this can actually be used to get rid of quite a few. So this, in a way, is a Hunter's board clear. Or at least, in my opinion, a way to do the board clear. Right. Whee! And yes, Aussie, you are absolutely right. It is a momentum shift card based on how it is read. Or at least the way it's presented itself. And momentum is all about how fast someone is going, how they're controlling the tempo of the game, all stuff we've discussed before. And if you haven't seen them, check out the previous episodes. Yay! Next. The Starving Buzzard. Aww. Apparently, the Hunter was too strong, and they've changed the Starving Buzzard. Now, the Starving Buzzard was a 2/2. I didn't have the Starving Buzzard. Or if I did, I'd be really shocked because I'm pretty certain I didn't have the Starving Buzzard. So, The starving butter. Wow, it helps if I spell things correctly. There we go. The Starving Buzzard is a 2/2, was a 2/2 for 2, which means you spend 2 mana, you got a creature on the board that had 2 attack, 2 defense, 2 toughness, and it had the special ability that whenever you summoned a beast, you draw a card. This is milling into your deck. You're able to mill your cards quicker to get 2 other cards that could help you do things like, gee, I don't know, release the hounds. So, in a way, this was a bit OP, and there are some board clears that only do 1 damage, so that's probably why they decided to knock this particular card's toughness down by 1. Makes sense to me. At the same time, it's still kind of sad. I'm going to miss you, you starving thing that I've never had a chance to play with. Sad face. Right. I really need to have like 4 monitors in order to do this show, because it's getting complicated. Next, as I said, when it comes to the priest, yeah. Mind control mana is now 10. Apparently, according to them, this change will give you a couple more turns to play with your Ragnaros. And not necessarily, because Ragnaros could very easily end up silenced if someone plays a 2 owl, which is a 2 mana owl, which is kind of frustrating. You summon Ragnaros, you're all, I shall! Okay, I can't do anything because it is now just a minion with some health and some toughness. Sad. But that's the beauty of this game, is the fact that you do have counters that don't necessarily have to be the most expensive counters in the game. There is a 4 mana card that can also silence as well, and there are some other cards out there that can silence, but the Owl is, in my opinion, one of the most OP cards in the entire Hearthstone arsenal, which makes me want to... Oops. No! Stop that. We want to go back. Open the collection. And we're going to type in the owl. Search for the owl. There it is. So we have the Ironbeak Owl. Now the Ironbeak Owl can pretty much do evil things to people. It silences a minion. It's not going to last very long, but it is a lifesaver versus things like Ragnarok, so it doesn't necessarily mean that what they say is 100% on the ball, because not everyone's going to want to play with Ragnaros. I'd rather play with minions that have a chance of killing somebody. There are too many counters to the epic cards for me to believe that it's possible for me to win with just Ragnaros. Although Ragnaros, in my opinion, so far is one of the more epic of the epic cards. It's more epic of the legendary cards. Yeah, that's a better way to put it. Warlocks. Now, this is interesting. I've run across several different types of Warlock decks in my play versus in the Hearthstone play mode. Some of the Warlocks that I have gone up against have, like, very rarely played a creature or a minion. They've been more focused on the spells that they do, and some of them are kind of crazy, like being able to pull a random demon from the nether and just kind of plump that down. I don't have enough of the Warlock cards to really build an awesome Warlock deck. So, you know, when it comes down to it, part of being able to understand the deck design choices that they're making, or the patch note changes that they're making that will impact your deck design, is knowing what was there to begin with, and I don't. So that's something I'm going to have to work on. But that's why I have you guys, because we're going to crowdsource this stuff. So we have the Warlock making a change to the Flame Imp. The Battle Cry means that it performs something upon its first summon. And in this case, they've increased the damage. And that to me is interesting. It seems to me that they kind of feel like some of the Warlock cards are a little bit underpowered. And they recognize this, which is interesting. Now, here's where I'm going to cry a little bit. The Argent Commander is one of those cards that is in like most of my decks, mainly because it's a little bit OP. Um, you actually have the ability, or it comes summoned with Charge and Divine Shield, which gives it a free attack for one, and it is used as an like almost an instantaneous clear for some of the larger cards that are out there. Um, it's just kind of sad. But as they said here, it was played more often than they'd like, so they're reducing its power slightly. Honestly, I don't think it's going to be like removed from my deck yet until I've actually looked at some of the other choices that are out there. But pretty much every single one of my decks has at least one Argent Commander in it, and I think it's just one because I think I only have one. But the card itself is just powerful, so there you go. Now, the Shattered Sun Cleric is another one of those amazingly powerful cards, and they're keeping it powerful, they're just lowering its health a little bit. I think they're worried that some of the board clears, the straight board clears they have, things like Frost Nova, Holy Nova, other Novas, uh, Consecrate, things like that, were just unable to help level the playing field, which is kind of what their purpose is for their cost. And I think this is their way of trying to balance it. However, I do appreciate the fact that they're not removing the Shattered Sun's Cleric's ability to add +1/+1 to a targeted card, because honestly, that's a big part of the playstyle that I currently use, is that baby has helped me out a lot. And there is nothing funnier than finding myself in a situation where I've put a 1/1 card down, and my Shattered Sun Cleric and a whole bunch of the other buff cards that I have ends up making it like a 10-3 because of some crazy shenanigans that has occurred. And people are like, well, I should have killed that 1/1, but I chose not to clear that, and now all of a sudden you're beating me in the face and it hurts. Ow, ow, ow. Which is kind of cool. And then, like they say, the golden version of the Elite Tauren Chieftain has been added, and yes, I do have it. So we might want to look at building a deck to something like that. So anyway, moving back to the screen where I can actually see everything and actually talk to people, because I like talking to you all and I miss seeing you when I am not doing stuff. And yes, yes, Arcane Explosion's another one. Okay, so I can now see the chat, which is awesome. As a reminder, I'll be giving a Hearthstone beta keyway shortly. We want to build a deck. And in this particular case, remember how we were talking about in previous episodes, there is a difference between doing a draft deck and doing a custom deck. Custom decks require a lot more control and knowledge of your card sets versus draft, where you have to just pick from what you get and do your best. And there is a strategy to that all unto itself, but that's not what we're doing here. As you can see, I have a couple of deck areas that I have left open. I have left them open specifically because I didn't know which one I wanted to play or what class we were going to look at playing. So what we're going to do is I apparently have a new card, and I should go check out what my new card is that I did not know that I had. Ah, there it is. Battle Cry. Give both players the power to rock with power chords. He's looking for a drummer. The current candidates are Novice Engineer, Sen'jin Shieldmaster, and Ragnaros the Fire Lord. And look at that. That is really epic. They've actually had musical notes flying, and you've got a guitar and all of the epic stuff. They've added changes to the graphics, which help, but at the same time, that is kind of cool. Maybe what we want to do is actually build a deck around randomness. I think that would be kind of interesting. I don't expect something like that to win, but I do expect it to be funny. Because there are cards that do random effects. For example, where is it? Of course, now that I have it in my brain, I won't be able to find it, will I? Of course not. And there's by the way, the Argent Commander, which makes me sad face a little at the fact that it's gotten rid of some of its stuff. It's not the Wisp. Where did it go? I thought it was a 3. I bet you it is a 3, and I just haven't found it. No, it's a 2. There we go. Deal 3 damage randomly. Do stuff randomly. Decks like that would be kind of cool. And yes, I want to win, so don't worry. I am not going to sit here and build random deck of doom. Although there is a style to be had for building something like a pure charge deck, which is something I'd like to look at some point. I don't think that's the deck I want to go with for going up against Mizpah, though. So let's look at the cards that are based in the classes, because that's going to help us decide this looks like it might be an interesting combination versus not. Because the neutral cards, you can't play a pure neutral deck. Well, in a way you could, but I really wouldn't recommend it, because part of the beauty of these decks is the fact that you have your special abilities as the different classes. So to answer your question, the class that I enjoy the most, it depends. I guess the best way for us to really look and see as to what deck I like the most is to probably look at the levels of my classes. My warrior is level 15, my shaman is 18, my rogue is 14, my paladin is 16, my hunter 10, my druid 14, my warlock 10, my mage 16, and my priest is 15. So we have mage, shaman, mage, shaman, paladin are the ones that I play a lot. Like a lot. So the question becomes, are we going to be building a deck to beat Mizpah up with using summoned totems, which is an interesting concept in its own right, summoned minions, which is sort of the paladin thing, or something that kills things one tick at a time? I think we're going to have to look at the shaman, the paladin, and the mage cards that I currently have and go from there. I think it is still well worth including the elite Tauren chieftain, because every deck should have a little bit of fun, and to me, that would be fun. No, the special abilities are not the only factor. So, we've narrowed it down so far to shaman, priest, and paladin. And I feel like I should do what I normally do. When designing a deck, paper is very important so that you can take notes. Because otherwise, you're going to forget something. I agree that class cards within the mage are very powerful, but I also believe that a very, very powerful deck can be formed from either the paladin or the shaman as well. And there is a reason for that. I have won a game multiple times with my shaman, specifically because of Flame Tongue Totem, which is a little bit OP, just a little bit OP, especially when I've got both on the board at the same time and no one can get rid of them, and Bloodlust. Those cards together, the Flame Tongue Totem and Bloodlust, created a situation where I ended up killing somebody in one turn. Because I had both Bloodlusts, I had the Flame Tongue open, and I had, like, enough minions out there. And some of them were just totems, because I was at the point where it was just totem, because I didn't have anything else to play, and I was saving up for something special. So, yeah. I really like Bloodlust. Like, I can't even begin to explain to you how much I love Bloodlust. I really, really love Bloodlust. And I absolutely love the Flame Tongue Totem. It turns those worthless 0-2 totems into something that can be deadly. And if you put these guys kind of next to each other, if you play it right, actually, what you can do is you can use this to sacrifice one of the cards that's adjacent to it. Because let's say I've got a card that's a 1-1, and I put it next to the Flame Tongue Totem. I use it to kill it off. Whatever card was next to it now moves to it, and that one now gets the actual totem bonus from Flame Tongue Totem, which can actually be used to do even more damage. So you can actually increase your damage by sacrificing your cards. Slight board clear gives them a slight advantage, but it could be the right choice to make at the time. And yes, Hex and Poly are very similar. And the interesting thing between the mages and the shamans is they both have something that kind of gives two creatures that have a special bonus to them, which is sort of like a taunt. You've got Mirror Image within the mages, and you have Feral Spirit. The difference being within Feral Spirit, you lose 2 of your mana next turn, but you get 2 creatures that actually have attack, not just defense. Whereas the mirror image for mages happens to be just a 0/2, two cards put down with taunt. So you're kind of making choices here. I think that Shaman is a heck of a lot more fun than Mage personally, which is why my Shaman is such a high level. Because when I got my hands on Bloodlust, I just went, oh, deal breaker. Now, it doesn't always work out that way, and sometimes I never get a chance to play Bloodlust, but at the same time, that's what the rest of the cards in the deck are for. The rest of the cards are to ensure that there is something going on. Something that I can still be successful with even if I don't get the combo cards, which is something that we discussed about in the very first version of our deck design episode, is you don't want to have yourself in a situation where you have to rely on the card or a card to come up. Something that you'd have like a 1 in 30 chance or a 1 in 29 chance of even getting your hands on. And that can be complicated, if nothing. So, I think what we're going to probably end up doing is going for an awesome deck in the form of a Shaman, because that to me would be fun. I have a feeling that Mizpah is probably going to use either the Warrior deck or he's going to use the Hunter deck that he was aware of from the tournament that took place at BlizzCon. However, the reality is those decks have changed now because Release the Hound has changed, which was a big part of the Hunter deck. And I have a feeling that if I take him on through Shaman, we'll actually have a better chance because I understand the class a little better. Because I play it a little bit more. So before we go into that, let's look at what my current Shaman deck happens to look like. The reason why we are doing this is because my current Shaman deck is set up specifically with the help of Marshmallow. And for those who don't remember, Marshmallow has joined us in our deck design episode 1, where we were starting to talk about what it means to build a deck, etc. And Marsh, having tons of experience within the MTG arena and being one of the top players in it, really helped. And now that Marsh is currently playing Hearthstone and stuff, good luck. Hopefully you win all the arenas. Fingers crossed for you. There is a certain style of play to this, and the thing that you're going to notice above all else is that this deck is built to be a bit more aggro, and this deck is also built to not be defensive. It's not 100% defensive or aggressive, because there is a bit of help and control in here, but one of the things that is important, at least for this style of play, is to 1, attack constantly, not worry about healing yourself, which is one of the things that the Shamans can do. Shamans do have the ability to heal themselves, and I can't figure out where it went. I don't think I have that one. Anyway, but they do have the ability to do some healing. And if you don't have the cards, you can't play them. So my deck included 2 of these, which allows for me to apply +3 attack that turn to something. It can actually be a lifesaver when trying to clear the bigger cards if I've just got a totem down and I'm like, I can't do anything. This 1 mana card has saved my butt many times. Well, my cards have changed, and we were looking at certain things. So, yeah. We're going to decide, because we definitely don't want to have Illidan in this deck. We don't. Illidan is pointless. This was me playing with Illidan to see if it was really worth having, and I don't think he is. There's Wind Fury, which is a very, very awesome thing to have. Wind Fury is a little bit OP, especially if you end up giving it to something like, oh gee, I don't know, the Argent Commander? Summon it, give it Wind Fury, kind of clear the board. just saying. Wind Fury is double attack applied to a card, and it is not a this turn only kind of a thing. So let's say that I decided to play the Acidic Swamp Ooze, and I was attacking something that had no health, not happening because most things in this game have, sorry, no attack. Most things have an attack. But let's say I was going up against the Mage's Mirror Images, which is a 0/2, and they hadn't buffed it or anything. I could throw Wind Fury on one turn on this. I could destroy their taunts in one turn because Wind Fury allows for multiple attacks. And then the next turn, my Swamp Boost still has 2 attacks. So making the decision as to when to play Wind Fury and whom to play Wind Fury on can be a very important deciding factor for controlling the momentum and tempo of the game and controlling and keeping advantage. Yes, don't worry. These are things that I will actually review with you. We then have the Acidic Swamp Boost. Now this is just sort of a main staple. It is a 2-mana card that gives me 3 attack, 2 defense, or 2 toughness creature, but it allows me to destroy a weapon. This can make or break a game if I end up finding myself going up against paladins or warriors or even hunters or rogues who get their hands on some rather big impressive weapons. This will allow me to clear that away from the board for just 2 mana, while at the same time still putting something down to maintain board control, which is powerful, which is why it's in every single deck I've got. I've got 2 of them in my deck. Next is the Bluegale Warrior. Now, Bluegale Warrior I have selected specifically because it has charge. In this, yes, it is a 2/1. It is probably one of those set it, kill, and forget it. Keep in mind, you will probably never keep the Bluegill Warrior on the turn that you summon it. It is used to help clear the board. It's got 2 attack. It can get rid of things like the Swamp Ooze from somebody else, which could be incredibly important. Now I only have 1, but that's okay. Next is the Fairy Dragon. Fairy Dragons are evil when you take them up against mages, priests, and anything else that does magic. They cannot be targeted by spells. They cannot be targeted by hero powers. They're a 3/2 creature for 2 mana. Does the Fairy Dragon seem a little bit OP to you? It should. Because the reality is, if I play certain things out on the board, like Wind Fury, and then I do Bloodlust, a Wind Fury Bloodlust combo on a Fairy Dragon is kind of evil, and they can't really kill it. But yes, I wish I had more than 1. I only have 1. Flametongue Totem. Very powerful, as we have seen. Ironbeak Owl. Again, incredibly powerful. 2-mana card, silences, keeps me with some board control. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to survive the next turn, kind of like the Bluegill Warrior, but this helps to control the actual board. It helps to control the advantage that is placed down, and this can save me from having my hand, or I should say my ass handed to me by someone who decides to play something like Ragnaros. Feral Spirit. Feral Spirit is a difficult one. I have had problems with this card. I appreciate the power of it, but I have had problems with it because sometimes it's one of the only things I can do to save my skin, but then it impairs me for the next turn, and I'm sitting there going, I've saved myself, but it just seems more like I'm just delaying the inevitable. So I want to put a little more practice in with that, and that's something we'll be doing. We will be play practicing. We then have Hex, which is kind of an important control card. If without it, it would be incredibly difficult for us to deal with some of the big things that show up. Making a decision as to when to use Hex and on what creature to use Hex is kind of important as well. I have actually played a game where it was wise to use this on a small card because it allowed me to win the game because they just only were able to get their hands on 1 taunt creature, and that was what was stopping me. So or it was like a 3/2 taunt or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but being able to kill it that quickly, yeah, that can save the game, even though it seemed like such a waste at the time. The Acolyte of Pain. I have only successfully had this draw 3 cards, which actually gives it the full benefit because it's every time it takes damage you get a card. So I've only had it actually happen once where I've gotten 3 cards from this. Generally speaking, I get either 1 or 2, depending upon what's going on. However, if I did Wind Fury, that would be kind of cool, especially if I did something like Ancestral Healing as well. Because then I could heal it back up and get more cards from it. So it's a way to drill down the deck, but it does tend to die rather fast because people do recognize that it is a drill card. Harvest Golem. A 3-mana creature that allows the death rattle, which means when it dies, it summons another creature. So you don't fully lose board control, but you do kind of lose a little bit of effectiveness. This is actually a play on the Blizzard's pet system that they've got going on, which I found kind of interesting. In the pet arenas in World of Warcraft, if you happen to have a mechanical creature and it dies, it does kind of re-res itself if you've got a golem. Now, obviously, the Shattered Sun Cleric has been depreciated or degraded by 1 toughness, but look at that. It still does a beautiful battle cry. That is probably going to mean I will keep it in my deck. Yes, there are 2 there. The Chillwind Yeti is kind of a general save my butt kind of card. People look at this and I go, oh my gosh, I need to deal with this card. And they should, because if I happen to draw a Shattered Sun Cleric and give this thing like Wind Fury, this card is going to be painful and will probably eat through some of the biggest cards out there. And I've got 2 of them. Defender of Argas. This card is so amazing. When it lands, the cards next to it get +1/+1 and taunt. There is nothing more frustrating to someone than them thinking they've got you, and then you play this card, and they're like, I have no clue how to get past you. And you're like, yeah, I know. And it's awesome. And this gives me 2 creatures with taunt instead of just 1. The thing is, if I wanted to play a taunt, I could play it, because Aussie is asking or pointing out about this engine shield. This deck is not designed to be quote-unquote taunt heavy. In fact, the only taunts that I get are from my totems and from when I play the Defender of Argas. I don't believe that I have taunts anywhere else. And the reason for that is this is terrifying deck. If you decide to come after me and not my cards, you're gonna die. It's kind of that simple. If you, however, decide to go after my cards, I need to ensure that the cards that I'm playing are powerful enough to be used in either 1 turn or have an impact that is actually going to last beyond just that turn, which they do. So, yes, I don't really have any specific taunt cards besides the Feral Spirit and the Defender of Argas. And it adds for a more aggressive playstyle, but the reality is I've only got 30 cards. 30 cards in general, like 10 turns, if a game gets that long, to kill my opponent. I'm either going to do it or I'm not. This is one of those all or nothings in some cases, because, yeah, I'm not healing anything. Here's another silence that I've purposely added in there, so that gives me 3 silences. So that's like a 1 in 10 chance of getting a silence, which is really good, especially when going up against a mage deck or something like that. Wind Speaker. Wind Speaker is a card that gives Wind Fury. It is evil. Wind Fury, again, in this case, once it's on, it's on. It's not a turn-based thing. And then I've got 2 of those, because minion, board control with Wind Fury allows me to do some board clearing, which helps me to gain a better advantage, which keeps my momentum going because I'm controlling the tempo of the game. Are we seeing a trend here? We obviously are. Obviously, we must have bloodlust. Anything that involves giving all of my minions, and sometimes all I have on my board are like 0-2 totems, it can be kind of powerful. The Frostwolf Overlord. I haven't had a chance to have this card come up while I've been playing. It seems like this one is stuck at the very bottom of my deck every time I play, so that every time I'm drilling through the deck, I don't see this card. I'm looking for it though, because this kind of card works great for a small minion group deck, which is basically what this is. If we look at my actual mana curve here, I am very low heavy. A lot of my cards are very small mana costs, and therefore they're not going to have this gigantic in your face wow kind of damage to them. But being able to pull this guy out makes sense. He's definitely a later game accomplishment, but he could really be like one of those things that saves my butt, especially if I then throw something like, oh gee, the Defender of Argus on him, which would be really cool if I could get that card to pull. But of course I can't. Now here's the Argent Commander. Again, this one has changed. I still kind of see the importance of this being the charge and the Divine Shield. Divine Shield just still means it's going to hit the first time for 4 damage with no damage being taken itself. Just because it has a lower health pool does not mean anything. Now I don't know if it can... if the AoEs bypassed Divine Shield. That's something I can't answer, so that might be something worth testing. Yes. Now, you are saying that it would be better to have taunt on other creatures so they can't charge your Warlord. Fair enough, but sometimes you don't have a choice. Fire Elemental. Yeah. The Fire Elemental, when it summons, does 3 damage, which can help you clear off some of the peskier problems that can land on a board. When this card comes out, it's kind of a deal with me now, because I'm going to start eating you. It's a little bit like a miniature version of Ragnaros, in the fact that if people don't deal with it, it does bad things. Which is why it's all up there. And then Illidan Stormrage, we are getting rid of. We're getting rid of Illidan Stormrage because we think it would be funny. Oops. To bring in a Tauren Elite and Chieftain. Yeah. So at this current moment in time, I have 0 cards that are 7+ mana. I have this slight downgraded curve to my mana. And, yeah. If we go back and we look at the shaman stuff, we see that, yeah, we are done with this for now. Within the shaman stuff, there we go. The cards that I didn't pick: Ancestral Healing, restoring a minion to full health and giving a taunt. My decks are kind of not about telling people which cards to attack. They're kind of more about just go. Giving totems health. I don't see any card that I would want to replace in my deck after having gone through it again with something like this. The other cards to me seem to have a higher importance. Frost Shock. This would really only benefit me if I was playing more minions that had more of a spell or +1 spell power, etc. I'm not doing that. I'm not playing a spell deck. So, Rockbiter Weapon. Yeah, that's in there. Wind Fury in there. Flame Tongue, can't live without it. Feral Spirit is in there. Hex we've got. We do have Windbreaker, we do have Bloodlust, and we do have some Fire Elementals. This is a hero card heavy deck. Now I know that the only thing that I have picked up recently, and it's interesting because usually I throw a Leper Gnome in there, but not this time. My Murlocs, I now have 2 charge Murlocs, but I don't think there's a card I want to get rid of. What do you guys think? Should I get rid of a card? By the way, if you are interested in the Hearthstone beta key that I am giving away in this episode, please send an email to voice@MMOBuff.TV right now. I'm going to check my email in 10 minutes, and I'm going to give the Hearthstone beta key out. So 10 minutes starting now. And yeah, so voice at MMOBuff.TV if you want that Hearthstone beta key. Just saying. Right. One card draw on the deck. That concerns you. I have 2 1-mana cards, and there's kind of a reason for it. I'm a slow starter, but once I start, I go. I'm all... The thing is, Shaman is based on a 2+ versus a lower one. Ah, I read you wrong. Yes, Novice Engineer does grant a card on deploy. That's its battle cry. What card would you replace? The beauty of the deck that is built this way, at least with this Shaman deck, is the fact that everything does work together. So I'm not trying to drill through my deck in this particular case. I'm just trying to make certain that whenever something shows up in my hand, it is usable, it is strong, and it is powerful, and can work with other stuff. Building multiple combos, basically, is what I'm going for. Am I successful? I don't know. The Elite Tauren Chieftain can tell me. Ha! I think just with the basic playstyle of the way that a shaman works, especially considering their overloads, you kind of want to sit there and just take your time. Slow and steady, like Thrall, destroying the world. Well, the Maelstrom kind of a thing. Okay, so what you're saying is in your playthrough, if you don't have a card, you end up out of cards. Or if you don't have a card draw, you end up out of cards. Now, I'm assuming you're talking about the advantage you have by having cards in your hand. One of the most difficult things I have had to learn in playing Hearthstone versus playing something like Magic the Gathering or something else is the fact that because of the fact that there's no quote-unquote interrupts, which means you have no reason to not spend all your mana on your turn. Well, at least that's the thinking. You can spend it all because you don't need to save it, because you don't need to tap in order to actually prevent an attack coming or cast a spell or an interrupt or something like that, which you can do in games like Magic the Gathering. But in this particular case, I had to stop myself from spending all my mana every turn. And that was what ended up happening. I ended up finding myself in a situation where on like turn 5, I had like almost nothing in my hand because I'm all, ooh, these cards are so cheap, I'm just going to play them all. Sometimes there is a time to hold on to a card. I've recently played a game where I kept my hands on the acidic ooze that I had, and I also kept the owl in my hand. I never played them. I didn't play them until much later in the game. I would actually just pass a turn using my hero power because I didn't want to lose the battle cries that were associated with them, and I wanted to ensure, because I was playing against a deck that had weapons, that if they summoned a weapon, I could deal with it. The only time I ended up playing the Swamp Ooze was when I realized I either played this card and did a full-on attack this turn, or I was basically delaying the inevitable of my death because they just did not summon another weapon. Did they summon a weapon after I put the Swamp Ooze down? Yes. Did they win? No. So there is a time to play your mana or blow all through your mana, and there's a time to not. If you are playing a drill-heavy deck, feel free to just throw your cards out. I mean, I think that would actually be part of the playstyle. But if you are not playing a drill deck, be much more conservative with your playstyle, and that's where the defensive side comes in, because this is an aggressive deck. As you can see, there's like nothing out that specifically says taunt. I just have the randomness of whether my totem pops up as a taunt, or the fact that the Defender of Argus can get played, or something. You know, I either have something occur where I can actually apply a taunt, or there is no taunt. This is not a matter of going through the deck quickly. This is a matter of going through my opponent's health and keeping board control by eating everything that they put down. And it does work. It seems odd, but it does work. But again, there's always going to be a time for you to go, this turn, I'm not playing everything. I'm going to end this turn and I still have 7 mana. Sometimes that's the secret. Because what you're actually doing is saving up for that final coup de grace kind of combo. You're just waiting for like 1 of 4 cards to pop up for you to place a combo down, which can be very, very beneficial. Well, I don't know if it will beat Miz. And basically what's going to end up happening is usually in most of the shows, after we finish going over things, we actually have a post-show. And we're going to have a post-show today. The post-show is going to be me actually taking this card out and playing with it. Because I want to see if I summon the Elite Tauren Chieftain. Come on. It's got to be played at least once. Whether or not I keep that or replace it with something else, like, say, you know, the Senjin, we'll find out. But, you know, it's got to be played. But basically, yeah. So, this top drawer kind of a thing. Draw. Yes, remember, you've basically got 3 minutes to get your email in to voice@MMOBuff.TV, and I will pick a random person from that and give them the Hearthstone beta key. Because we're cool like that. But yes, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to move us past the typical show and move us into the post-show. And the post-show is going to be us taking at least the Shaman deck out for a spin and discussing why certain things are what they are. And I am going to make mistakes. I am going to have moments where someone's going to go, why did you play that? And I'm all like, you know, because I didn't think that far in advance. And apparently, according to Marsh, sometimes the secret is to actually think 2 to 3 turns in advance. Complicated to do if you don't know everything, but we've just gone over the deck. We know what's in it. We have an idea of the chances of us getting our hands on certain things. That's going to really help us out, at least with play. So, top draw. Make certain that you're following and everything else like that. YouTube, subscribe, and all those other things. And we'll be back with a playthrough, and we're going to see what happens. So, yeah. And I'll also check my email to see who wins. Be right back. Oh, and this is Shinogi, Toodle Pip from Pseudo.